Greetings of peace, everyone. This is Bassem Shaban, director of the Peace Institute, with a episode related to race in America, as the show that we discussed in our intro video when we introduced our distinguished guest speakers, Rabbi David Kay from the Jewish community and Imam Hatim Hamidullah from the Muslim community. So once again, we're very happy they are able to join us with their busy schedule. And today we're going to really talk about a serious issue in line with the recent incidents in Buffalo as well as California, where there's a lot of talk right now in the community about this concept of replacement theory that has motivated many of the shooters that have committed a lot of these acts of violence in the last few years in America and around the world. And many of the investigators have looked at the suspects' manifestos and investigated their background, and they've noticed a common thread of motivation from what's called replacement theory. So today with our guests, we're going to talk about what it is, as well as what their view from their community's perspective and faith perspective is, as well as identify possible solutions to heal the wounds of the country and the world related to this, believe it or not, historical theory, that this is not just something that popped out just a few years ago. So first and foremost, we'd like to share a quick video that gives us insight into what is actually replacement theory. So we'll start with this quick video that gives us insight into the notion itself, and then go into our discussion with our guest speakers.
We've seen it throughout history, whether it was colonizers or it was Nazis in Germany who described Jewish people as terrible threats, used white supremacist ideology to justify a campaign to systematically eliminate them.
Peyton Gendron, a white 18-year-old, allegedly gunned down 10 people in Buffalo, New York on May 14th. Before the shooting, he had posted a document online fixating on the idea that non-white people would eventually replace white Americans, according to authorities. This attack is just the latest in a series of violent acts connected to each other by this conspiracy theory, known as replacement theory. And while it's been lurking in dark corners of the internet for years, the concept has slowly been leaking into mainstream discourse. According to polls, roughly a third of all adults in the US today feel that immigrants are being brought into the country to replace native-born Americans and undermine their economic, political, and cultural power.
I think it's correct to understand the phrase replacement theory as maybe a new frame or a newer framework for an old idea.
Replacement theory's origins can be traced to a 1973 French book that described a mass immigration from the global south destroying white Western society and became popular among white supremacist and anti-immigration groups around the world. It also influenced author Renaud Camus, who published his book called The Great Replacement decades later.
I think there is a certain discourse that frames this as a fringe movement or something that's on the margins, but really we have to understand, again, with that historical context, these ideas are making a comeback and they're being popularized and politicized in a context of demographic change.
I understand my charges.
Gendron, who pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, appears to be the latest in a series of attackers fueled by these racially motivated ideas. In 2018, a man wrote on social media that he blamed Jews for bringing non-white people into the US before allegedly killing 11 people at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. He pled not guilty and is awaiting trial. In 2019, another man in New Zealand released a document online titled The Great Replacement before he live-streamed himself killing 51 people. He pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. A month later, a shooter in California wrote an online letter referencing these extremist beliefs before killing one person and injuring 3 at a synagogue. He pled guilty and was sentenced to life plus 30 years. In August that year, an extremist in Texas referenced a Hispanic invasion before allegedly killing 23 people at a Walmart in El Paso. He pled not guilty and is awaiting trial.
When we see anti-Black racists literally weaponized in this way, or again, in the example of the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, the violent anti-Semitism that gets popularized, not even just in traditional media, but especially the use of social media and the internet to spread ideas, but also spread violence.
Over the past decade, white supremacists were responsible for more than half of all extremist murders documented by the Anti-Defamation League. American lawmakers have taken notice.
White nationalist groups target communities of color and religious minorities through social media platforms, some of which are well known to all Americans, and some of which operate in hidden corners of the web. In each case, perpetrators were motivated by a belief that people perceived to be non-white, whether they be African Americans, Jews, Muslims, or members of other minority communities, were plotting to undermine the white race as part of a great replacement.
The great replacement part of this is just kind of one aspect of a larger racist ideology that has justified domination on a global scale. It can be harder for some of us to see the historical roots of these racist ideas and violent practices. And until we have the courage to collectively face this history, it's going to be very difficult to move forward and build the kind of inclusive and just society so many of us would like to see.
So as we can see, the issue of replacement theory is another of the many conspiracies that are out there on the web and throughout history. And that's why it's important that we have these discussions so we can find solutions to the legacy of slavery and racism in America and around the world. So with that, Rabbi Kay, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts and opinions about replacement theory and anything that you're aware of from your background?
Thank you. Yes, it's a very, very important conversation. You know, the idea that is now known as replacement theory that was articulated in those books from the French authors in the 20th and beginning of the 21st century is also quite easy to find in Victorian England. It was referred to then as reverse colonization, that, Britain and the other European colonial powers had spread all over the world, and people from those places in the world were moving to England and elsewhere. And suddenly the people who lived in those colonial countries were concerned that people from Asia and Africa, the Jews from Eastern Europe, were moving into their country and were going to, quote unquote, replace them. We can see this attitude, though, going all the way back to really to the Hebrew Bible. If you go back to the Pharaoh of the enslavement of the Israelites, the rationale that's given there by Pharaoh and his advisors is that there's this people who are different than we are, and there's more and more of them, and we're worried that they're going to take over, that they're going to ally themselves with our enemies, and that they're going to ruin the country. So unfortunately, it's not a new concept in human civilization. And you would hope that in the intervening several thousand years, we would have come to a logical way of dealing with it. But it's pretty clear that we have not, and it's also pretty clear that it's been, as the person in the video said, that it's been weaponized. It's taken a new form as supposedly a political ideology, even a sort of patriotism. When I see those parades with people waving American flags, what they're saying is that, the quote unquote real America is a white Christian one, and probably a male dominated one as well. So unfortunately, we are not looking at something which is new. Unfortunately, it has always been associated with a type of anti-Semitism as well. In Victorian England, it was supposedly the Jews who were facilitating the influx of people from other parts of the world. We heard the same thing in the video as well. Other people of color, people from other civilizations, people from other cultures, are all considered to be persona non grata.
Thank you, Rabbi. Imam?
Yes, thank you for having me again today. This is a very vague. I would say the answers for this situation with replacement theory is a very, very vague subject, and I think that those in power would do themselves in the country, wherever they exist, a great favor if they would just kind of slow down a little bit and look at themselves, look at their family and the value of themselves and their family and the country in general. But I thank the rabbi for those eye-opening historical references, and to kind of just follow up on what he said. It has its ebbs and tides in history, and we go as far back as Adam and Eve, Adam and Hawa, and the two sons of Adam, peace be upon Adam, where it was not so much at that time race, it was just a character or behavior that existed in two individuals. And that catapulted into, this whole idea about people occupying regions and, the other concept about the other, and there's a phrase in our religious terminology. It says, "Ana astakbara," I'm better than he is. It's in Arabic. I'm better than he is, and this even goes back to the creation of Adam in heaven. So not to try to make this conversation too religious, but I think that we should stay anchored. I'm going to stay anchored in religious theology when it comes to all these matters, because we believe that the only solution to these matters would be individuals coming together and discuss these matters, not as a matter of as a different race, this race or another, but as you know, the term human race. And I like to dwell down on the idea of the rights of every individual human. And that's what it all boils down to, and it's even more, challenging when, as was mentioned earlier, the whole idea of replacement theory was catapulted by a certain, political field. It was politicalized and made even more challenging for people to come to grips with the reality that these kinds of things should not really actually be happening in a real civilized society. When we talk about civility, what is civilized? How do you describe civilization now? How do you describe civility nowadays? These words have taken on different shades of meaning over the millennia. So I think this is a very good conversation. I think we have good resources. We have good people in order to deliver this information. And we want to peel back the onion, so to speak. That's how I see it. Want to peel back the onion and look at, just what is replacement theory and what is its history more and more in our society and in other societies, as has been mentioned. And we want to break down the buzz of this whole situation. It's linked to critical race theory and replacement theory. All these theories out here need to be looked at very closely, dissected, and see the roots of all of these problems, so we can just have this conversation that we're having today. And I'm more than happy to participate in this conversation.
All right, thank you both. Now, is there anything that you guys have noticed about the perpetrators of these acts? there seems to be a common thread. Obviously, they're white, they're young, but do you guys, have you noticed anything else that really signifies why are certain people, obviously not all white people are thinking this way, but there are people who do, and that's why they act on their beliefs. But is there something you're noticing of who actually is doing this? Rabbi?
I think there's, thank you. I think there's something that the Imam touched on about, if we peel back those layers, what's going on underneath. And certainly these are people who are being driven by hatred and racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, whatever it is. But I think it's that last word, xenophobia, that gives us an important insight. It's fear. Why would you be concerned that one particular group of people is increasing in your country? Only if you're afraid of those people. And it's fear that drives us to violence, because we suddenly have this sense that we have to defend ourselves against in this case, a non-existent threat, or a threat which has sort of been hyped up. Going back to 19th century England, the idea that these people who were that the British had colonized, who were inferior to them as far as they were concerned, the idea that they may establish themselves as part of the society in England was terrifying to Victorian Brits. Likewise, we have this tremendous fear here in the United States of people who are different than what is the mainstream, at least for the time being. And it's most likely inevitable that mainstream is going to change. Some of the things that have happened with with the culture here in the U.S. is there's been a beautiful and dynamic blending of cultures and races and ethnic backgrounds. I think there is a remnant of the population for whom that is absolutely terrifying. That it's not going to be the same world that it was when they were kids, and thank God it's not going to be the same world. Hopefully it's going to be a better world.
Very good. Imam?
Yeah, so I think I would just go straight to a statement by our prophet Muhammad, present peace be upon him, and the Arabic translated into English. And I know you guys have heard this more than once. There is no favor of an Arab over a non-Arab, and there's no favor over white or over a black. And the prophets were given answers, basic and fundamental answers, as well to deal with these situations. The question becomes whether or not when they hear the common sense statements about the things that's causing these fears, then will they relate to them? When you have 63% of people thinking that there's a great movement for the other to come and take over. This, to be quite honest with you, from my perception as a student of Quran, as a teacher of Quran, teacher of religious language, and all of this seems kind of infantile to me. It seems very, it lets me know that people are not really trying to seek justice in their own and balance in their own thinking and rationale. It is this fear that has leaped up over common sense. The common sense of the people is, and I have to say, I mentioned this last week, that it has become, not that it was not tagged this, but it has become a virus. This whole situation about black and white and brown and whatever, we need to slow down and continue to have these conversations. I remember growing up, my experiences with, other people, with Caucasians, with Hispanic people, et cetera, et cetera. And there would always sometimes be a little something said about this, that, or the other. And it would resonate with me. But my question was always, why, is it this much animosity or this little hatred, or, of the other? Is because I believe that people have not taken the time to know the other. That's what I believe.
All right, thank you. And before we run out of time, the most important part here is do you think are the solutions to this problem moving forward in America and around the world? Rabbi?
Well, I think the Imam has identified it perfectly and beautifully, which is, you're mostly afraid of what you don't know and what you don't understand. And, my tradition, and certainly every other tradition that I can think of, both religious traditions and humanist traditions, in one form or another, teach that, we have a responsibility to each other. And there's no qualifications on that. Not just other people in our faith tradition, not other people in our ethnicity, not other people in our cultural background, but just human beings entirely. The solution, the way forward for many of the problems that we face, is just getting to know the people that you're afraid of. Why do you fear someone just because of their physical appearance or their cultural background? The problem lies with the person who's afraid, not necessarily with the person they're afraid of. There's plenty of things to be concerned about in the world, that's for sure. But a total stranger who has never done you any harm, whom you have animosity towards because you don't know them and you fear them, that's not a real enemy.
Yeah.
Very good. Anything else, Imam?
Yes, just observing the fact that, when we come up with answers, not necessarily our own answers, but some things that we have heard, that we've read, or that's something that we listen to that resonates with us as individuals. I mentioned last week that the biggest problem, or the biggest tests of religious people, religious leaders, even, politicians as well, educators as well, is how we address these problems in these different venues, and can we come to common terms? Can we come to a delicate balance when we begin to discuss these issues based upon facts? And then that's another issue, about facts. Are there facts that are real facts, or something, facts that are made up facts? Are these true facts? Are these false facts? And this how people, kind of slow down and take a good hard look at these issues, that I think that we're going to gain some ground on these problems. I'm be honest with you, I'm really elated to be part of this process, because we can eat away at the edges, so to speak, of the topic, and kind of isolate one aspect of the topic and just go to work on it, and then and take a good hard look at it, like a person in a laboratory would just look at something that he puts up on a microscope. I think this is a good opportunity. I'm really elated.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for both of your wisdoms. And I think everything is summarized in psychology in what's called contact theory, that the more we are in contact with each other, we break down a lot of barriers, stereotypes, misunderstandings, and that is the road to recovery and to really build not only friendships, but working together for the solutions of humanity. So thank you very much for your time on a very sensitive topic, and we look forward to having you join us for future episodes on many more subjects related to race in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you.